And just like that, we're down to 4 undefeated teams.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thanks so much for making us your first listener watch on this Wednesday. And I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. Visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. Special shout out, welcome into all the everydayers and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord that are here with us. Great to have you guys. Here's where we're headed on the show today. Iowa State takes their first L of the season at Kansas. We're going to talk to the host of Locked On Cyclones, Nick Marovets, to unpack it. UConn exercises some demons on the road at Seton Hall. Virginia gets off to a crazy start at Louisville, doesn't look back. A&M and Tennessee need 2 overtimes to figure things out, while some other ranked SEC teams on the road just absolutely take care of business. We'll get to it all, but first, let's head and talk to Nick Marovets, the host of Locked On Cyclones, about the first loss of the season. Apparently, Hilton Magic did not travel to Lawrence, Kansas on Tuesday night, and then there were 4. All good things must come to an end, whatever you want to say. I'm joined now by the great host of Locked On Cyclones, Mr. Nick Marovets. And while it's a joy to have you on, Nick, I know it's not a joy in Ames, Iowa here on this Wednesday. Because, sure, we all expected that Iowa State was going to lose at some point, maybe even in this game in Allen Fieldhouse against a desperate Kansas team. But what is boggling my mind right now is the fact that Iowa State seemingly just didn't show up for a vast majority of this basketball game. So, Nick, welcome. Glad you're here. But good grief, what happened?
Yeah, I wish it could have been under better circumstances that I was making the stop by today. It was an ugly one. I'm not going to lie. This first 20 minutes were a tough watch. Iowa State lost the first half by 21 points, and they ended up losing the game by 21 points. So the way I see it, they basically lost the game in the first half. They just came out with no intensity on either side of the ball, to be completely honest. Offensively, it just didn't really look like they knew what they were doing. They weren't really getting to their spots, running much of an offense. And on defense, you know, you're in Allen Fieldhouse. You're an undefeated team. You're ranked number 2. If any momentum starts to swing the Jayhawks' way, it's going to be tough to really stop them. And they didn't really put any emphasis on keeping Kansas from scoring early. It just got out of hand right away. It was not ideal for the Cyclones.
Yeah, a lot of times, like popping up on the screen behind me here is Virginia-Louisville highlights. Virginia got off to a 14-0 lead. Louisville fought back. It was a similar thing here. It was 11-3 Kansas out of the gate. Mm-hmm. And gosh, at one point it got to 44-18, Nick. And so there was never that fight that you're talking about. Some of it, for my money's worth, was the turnovers. I think it was 10 for Iowa State in the first half, 2 for Kansas. But it was the coming off of that. Kansas led points off turnovers in the first half, 13-0. Like even just that kind of stuff. So in your mind, is this a bigger problem that you saw? Is it just like, hey, we moved up to number 2 after Michigan loss and we weren't ready to come into Allen Fieldhouse, got our butts whipped, and now it's back to the drawing board? Where are you at? Is the sky falling, or is this like, yeah, it's a blip, we'll get back to it?
Kind of both. I have to say, and I hate to say this, I did see this coming a little bit. Obviously, you're playing in a very tough road environment, and that's going to be a part of this, but the offense hasn't really been clicking over the last few games for Iowa State, and they have been getting out to very, very slow starts. And so I did wonder if Kansas can get out to the start like they basically did in this game, can Iowa State respond? It doesn't really feel like, and I know that the metrics don't really say this, which is just crazy to me, but it feels like in the half court, Iowa State struggles to get buckets. I don't know what it is that, you know, sometimes Jefferson just becomes Joshua Jefferson and he can score. Like, I understand that he has that capability, but I have seen leading up into this game a little bit of a not so great of things on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that there is something to be concerned about, but, you know, and I'm sure this is not exactly what you're asking. We'll get to this in a second, but the future, I think, is bright in the fact that they can look at this game now and learn from it, right?
Yeah.
So, there were trends, and I think they were masked by winning is kind of what I'm trying to say here. It doesn't really matter if you let up, 25 extra points the first half if you end up winning the game. And I was actually scared that they'd win this game and it'd all be all right. If you now know that you can lose, you go forward with the sense of, all right, we have to clean up this, we have to clean up that, we have to clean up this, and then they become a better basketball team.
Yeah, it was funny because, I mean, it's just a tough shooting day from an efficiency standpoint. Tamin Lipsey, 4 of 15. You mentioned Josh Jefferson, 4 of 14. That's tough when those two dudes are going 8 of 29. It's not going to be a good day, Nick. And there's that. Now, we do have to factor in, it's like Kansas is essentially already in desperation mode. They were 1-2 in Big 12 play. Could have easily been 0-3 had they not had that massive comeback last week. But it's like what you have to do as a team then is recognize that level of intensity and then find a way to match it. And ultimately, I think, you're talking about Iowa State's inability to get there. And I think that might be a factor is they just didn't have that ratcheted up because they didn't know. Consequently, the biggest halftime deficit since 5 years ago, January of 2021. Nick, as you watched, let me ask you to put on just like a Big 12 hat here and zoom out and look at the Kansas side of it. Obviously, Darryn Peterson in this game, he's been in and out. He had that weird thing where he paused under the basket for a little bit. If you're Bill Self, are you encouraged by what you saw on Tuesday night?
Absolutely. And I think really probably the biggest thing that Kansas can look at here is they can play with the big dogs, of course, but they can also really turn up the intensity when that's what the situation calls for. Because the last thing I'd really like to point out before I put my Big 12 hat on is the 7 minutes coming out of the halftime, Iowa State ratcheted up that intensity to like a 10 out of 10, which is what they've done. And that was when they cut the gap down to, I think it was 11.
Yep.
That was
the lowest they got. Yep.
Yeah. So like Iowa State, if they just played with more intensity, then they can win games, I guess, is maybe the conclusion you draw from that. But if you're Kansas, like you can prevent that. And they actually fended Iowa State off from continuing that run. So I think if you're Kansas, this is the last few games have not been great for them, but it doesn't mean the season's over. They're still very talented. They have shooters. They have guys who can get to their spots, but also great offensive possessions as well. In this game, there was some phenomenal ball movement in the first half. They were dominating the paint. Like, there's a lot to be excited about for if you're Kansas here. And as a Cyclone, I'm just looking at that as like, this was a good team. Like you were going to lose at some point. You lost to Kansas on the road. It is what it is.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Nice for Kansas to see Trey White actually lead the team in scoring, just ahead of Darryn Peterson with 19. Homie was 5 of 7 from beyond the arc. That's crazy stuff. A double-double there with 10 rebounds as well. For the Jayhawks, a little bit of a manageable schedule ahead. Maybe the next big one we look to for the Jayhawks is BYU coming up on Saturday, January 31st, followed by a turnaround trip for Big Monday to Lubbock, Texas. So that's an interesting weekend upcoming for Kansas. Nick, let's forecast ahead a little bit for the Cyclones. What I want to ask is, like, I grew up in Atlanta, big Braves fan, and I remember Hank Aaron often talking about like the relief when he finally hit that 755th home run and the whole thing was over. Is there some level at which it's like, okay, this is all said and done now. We finally lost. That pressure's gone. That target is gone. Now we can just go out and ball. Like, is there some element of that to this?
I absolutely think so. And I looked at the Baylor game as maybe another one of those kind of contention points because that was to move to 15-0.
Right.
And that would have that was the best start in season or in school history. And there was like all of this, kind of around that game. And it felt like once they were past that, maybe there was a little bit off, but now you're the number 2 team in the country. And there's just like, it almost felt like pressure on some level. And I don't know if that translated to the effort level, but I think now, if you're TJ Otzelberger, you can look at these guys and say, like, I told you we weren't going to be perfect. Like, and I am almost certain that that's what he's been telling them. Like, we are going to lose a game, that this was inevitable. We're human. We can move on to the next one. There's no, like, I just think this is probably the best time for a loss too. We were talking, before the season with our season preview, we didn't expect Iowa State to go into this game 16-0. And if you were to pick any game to lose, this is probably one of the games that I would have circled. You go into a relatively easy. next 8 games or whatever it is till they play Kansas again. And then you wouldn't want to lose at the end of the season. Like this feels like the game if you were going to lose one to lose.
And Nick, that's the thing. You just alluded to it. From now until it's the return game back in Ames on Valentine's Day. Oh, it's going to be sweet and tender. Get your kiss cam out. Bring your Valentine. Put chocolates in everybody's seats in Hilton. I can't wait to see it. But the 7 games between now and then are very winnable. So there's a world which that rematch, the Cyclones are 23-1 at that point. Now, look, I'm not going to put that on them because that's so much pressure. It's the Big 12. Crazy things are going to happen. But you almost feel like we got to take care of business game after game after game, because that closing 7-game stretch that starts with that Kansas game is insane. And again, going back to our preview, we certainly talked about that there. So, Nick, if you're TJ Otzelberger's crew, knowing that you've got that closing bonkers schedule, what has to happen in these next 7 games that include, let me read it off, at Cincy, hosting UCF, at Oklahoma State, hosting Colorado, at K-State, hosting Baylor, at TCU. Oh my gosh, literally every game between now and then is away, home. So back and forth in that regard. That's interesting. Wow. What has to happen in those 7 games?
I think you have to re-identify offensive roles, really, is my biggest thing here. I think that, defensively, we know what the scheme is, and I do wonder if maybe Kansas just picked up on that, and if the intensity isn't there, it's an exploitable scheme. But offensively, we have to get back to, or they have to get back to what each role is. I think there's been some blurring of the lines. Even it felt like at one point, Torrey was taken out right after like 2 weird offensive possessions, where I'm not saying that that Torrey can't handle that he can't drive to the hoop or shoot that 3, but that's not the style of offense that Iowa State runs. And I think that they've kind of gotten into if it's not running exactly how it should be, we'll run hero or iso ball. And that's just not what Iowa State offense should be. So I think over the next 7 games, you have a great opportunity where you don't have to score 150 points a game. You can just kind of re-step back into those roles and start to feel it out going into those really, really tough games down the stretch where you will be tested. Can you hold strong?
It's going to be interesting to see if it'll happen. I cannot wait. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the segment, there are still 4 remaining undefeated teams. 2 of the others were also in action on Tuesday. Nick, this is insane. Miami of Ohio obliterate Central Michigan 100-61. They're now 18-0. And Nebraska at home in Pinnacle Bank absolutely housed Oregon 90-55. What on earth? The Ducks are awful. I can't wrap my brain around it. As for the other 2, Arizona hosts Arizona State tonight. Vandy is on the road in Austin to take on the Longhorns. I am very curious to see that one. Nick, we'll see if anyone else can join you and Michigan in that 1-loss category, but going to be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, big thanks to Nick for joining us today. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Cyclones and everything that's going on there for Otz's crew. A great, great season that will only continue going forward. This, in my opinion, a blip on the radar. We'll see what happens. Nick, best of luck to the Cyclones going forward.
Hey, can't wait to talk to you when Final Four roll around and Iowa State's still going, baby.
Ooh, baby. Now, let's go to the Big East where UConn finally breaks their Seton Hall spell on the road, but boy, was it close. What did Braylon Mullins do defensively to help seal the victory? We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, the college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Ride with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup. Hello, Indiana. What's up? Take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming. Maybe you think something's going to happen with Miami, or you can build a parlay around the players and moments you think are going to decide the national championship game on Monday. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And the great news is that when you do win, FanDuel pays out instantly. Man, going to be great stuff. That line at FanDuel right now is 8.5 in favor of the Hoosiers. Crazy stuff there. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. We had two ranked games on Tuesday night, UConn at Seton Hall and then Virginia at Louisville. UConn, you might be aware, had lost 4 straight road games to the Pirates. And the kind of cruel irony for Shaheen Holloway's team here is that this is the year they're ranked. And it's like, okay, let's make this 5 straight. But this is the year that UConn comes in and wins this basketball game. And it's painful for Seton Hall, who gets oh so close on a night when they shoot 1 of 16 from beyond the arc. And yet there they were right there at the end of the game with down 3 with the ball, a chance to win. And there comes Braylon Mullins, who has been so good since he's gotten going for this team. And he wins it with his defense, fights through a screen, gets recovers to the shot, is able to block it. Who knows if that was going to go in to tie things up, but we never had to find out. And you know that Dan Hurley is happy about that. By the way, before we talk UConn, Coach Hurley basically said after the game, look, that Seton Hall team is a team that I do not want to see in any sort of tournament, and I don't think any coach in America would either. We've seen the Seton Hall team coming along. They've been looking all right. They've been playing well, and it's really encouraging to see like that. I'm just so happy for them and what they've been able to accomplish. Obviously, beating UConn yet again would have been massive, but they weren't able to do it this time. It is their 3rd loss of the season. They've now lost to USC, Villanova, and UConn. Like, very respectable, right? That's the thing. But if you add, because Seton Hall's best win at this point is probably NC State on a neutral, but if they had knocked off a national champion contender, man, I'm just gutted for Seton Hall. Not that I didn't want UConn to win. It's just cool when you see neat things like that happen. Now, for UConn, you know, I mentioned Braylon Mullins, very efficient night, 5 of 9, 11 points. That's great and that's fine. But the story is Tarris Reed, right? Like UConn Reed has been not fully healthy at times. I think, quite frankly, UConn's 1 loss is because Tarris Reed wasn't fully healthy. But here he is leading the charge in this game, 21 points on 8 of 13 shooting. He was bad at the free throw line. Tarris Reed was. He will tell you that as well. 5 of 13. That's like, it's just so bad. Oh, my word. 9 boards, had 4 offensive rebounds, really 3 blocks and a steal for Tarris Reed. A great game to lead the way for the UConn Huskies. And it was interesting because UConn was up by as much as 18 in this game, 46-28. And so, honestly, kudos to Seton Hall for battling back. They never came back to take the lead, but they got it down. Did it ever get down to 2 or 1, or was it just it did get down to 1 with 48 seconds left. That's right. And so, man, I mean, Seton Hall just right there, and they just couldn't get it done. And so it's like one of those where it's like no moral victories. You got to feel good about it, but dang, you know, Shaheen and his staff are sad that they couldn't get this one. Elsewhere in Louisville, Kentucky, the road ranked team also won. Virginia gets out to a 14-0 run to start this basketball game. Yes, you heard me correctly. The score of this basketball game was 14-0. The problem for Louisville is yet again, Michael Brown unable to go. It's his 7th straight game with this back injury. And it's kind of that point where it's like in Darryn Peterson territory here, where if you're Louisville, if you're the other players, you're like it's almost like I'd rather wish we just know that you're done for the season or something like that, because then we can know our roles. We can be ready to go. We can be ready to play within whatever that is. Right now, there's this back and forth, and you just don't know what's going to happen. Also, Kenai Ruth's missed this game with an illness. That's a struggle for them. The good news, Ryan Conwell, knocked knees with somebody at practice recently, and he was kind of questionable in this game, but he was able to go. But rough night for Ryan Conwell shooting. Scored 14 points, but needed 21 shots to get there. Like, that is bonkers level. What are we doing? 7 rebounds, 3 assists to go with it. Louisville's led in scoring by Isaac McNeely. It's always good to see that, 23 points. But again, similar thing. Needed 16 shots to get there, 5 of 14 from three. That's better. I mean, you're just shy of 50% from the field and over 33% from beyond the arc. So that's good. But ultimately, the story here is Virginia. And here's my question that I'm pondering, and I'm curious your thoughts. So coming into the season, I thought Louisville was going to be kind of a world beater. I had predicted them to win the ACC over Duke, over North Carolina, over everybody else. And it's just not looking like that's going to happen. Right now, it seems like Duke is far and away the number one team in the ACC. But the question now, especially if Michael Brown's going to continue to be on the shelf, is what? Like Louisville's lost 5 games at this point. They're 2-3 in the ACC. They lost at Stanford. They lost at home to Duke, understandable. And now they lost at home to Virginia. So they've lost 3 of their last 4. Their other losses being true road games, to be fair, at Arkansas and at Tennessee. That's fine, right? 10-2 in ACC play. They still have, the reason they've only played 12 non-con games is they're playing Baylor in February. And so you're fine with that. You lose at Arkansas, at Tennessee, fine, whatever. But now you start ACC play 2-3. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. And remember, they got Duke again in 3 more games? Yeah, they got to go to Pitt, then host Virginia Tech, and then at Duke. They still got to go to North Carolina. They don't get a return game there. But they got to go to Miami to end the regular season. The Canes look really good. Their only game against Clemson is on the road. And so that's how they close with 3 of 4. Louisville does at Carolina, at Clemson, hosting Syracuse, at Miami. They could lose all 3 of those away games easily. So hand up, I'm out on Louisville. I was wrong. Duke's going to win this conference. I believe that. But is Virginia the second best team in the ACC right now? North Carolina's been having some struggles. Miami looks okay, but I don't know that they're at Virginia's level. Virginia can shoot. They've got size. I mean, gosh, Odom is such a good coach. I think there is a very real world where that's what we're talking about here, where this is hey, Louisville is, Virginia, second best team in the ACC. Like, I know it might sound crazy, but you go get this win at Louisville, and now that's a very real conversation we got to have. Malik Thomas leads the way in this one, 19 points. Grunlow had 16. Kind of a quiet day for Tyster Ritter, but Sam Lewis chips in 15. Virginia doesn't get to 80, and that's notable because they had done it in all but 2 games. They do get to 79, so it's like, hey, if we were rounding up. But, they're just rolling. And again, for those of you that haven't seen the new look Virginia Cavaliers, this is not a Tony Bennett squad. This is not a squad that's going to slow it down and try to, bore you to death the same way a Tony Bennett team would do. But this Virginia team is, they're not fast, but they're not in the bottom 50 anymore. They're in they're 266. So basically like bottom 100, the top of the bottom 100 in pace, but they're doing so much stuff. They're 5th in offensive rebounding percentage. It's like that alone is going to keep them in all sorts of basketball games. And so really, really good by Virginia to get this win on the road at Louisville. Better days ahead for Virginia, or more good days ahead for Virginia. For Louisville, man, I just don't know what's going to happen. So we need to get to some SEC action. Texas A&M went to Knoxville. Volunteers were looking to rebound from the weekend, but they needed 2 overtimes to get it done. Meanwhile, a couple other ranked SEC teams on the road absolutely had their way on Tuesday night. Plus, we had a buzzer beater in the Big Ten. We'll look at it all coming up in just a second. Texas A&M was on the road at number 24 Tennessee on Tuesday night, and I got to tell you, Buckyball has been rolling. They were looking to become the first SEC team to get to 4-0 this season. There's one other undefeated team in SEC play. Who is it? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I'm going to have to look. Oh, Vandy. Duh. Of course, I'm an idiot. But everyone else in the SEC has at least one loss already, other than Vanderbilt, other than Texas A&M. The Aggies go up 11 points in this game. And I was like, dude, Buckyball is rolling right now. They're going to be 4-0 in the SEC. They're up 11, or, kind of early in the first half, but they held a lead throughout the second, had opportunities to win it, and just couldn't get it done on the road in Knoxville, losing in double OT 87-82. And for Tennessee, man, this is a hugely needed win after kind of getting embarrassed by Florida over the weekend. Remember, they had lost 2 of 3 with losing at Arkansas as well. So those away losses, you understand losing at Arkansas, you understand losing at Florida. But then if you turn around and compound it by losing at home to Texas A&M, now you've lost 3 of 4. You're what? They would have been 1-3 in SEC play, while A&M goes to 4-0. But Tennessee able to gut it out, able to get it done. This is the number 1 team in the nation in offensive rebounding. And for my money's worth, that was the stat that turned the tide in this basketball game. All sorts of crazy numbers, obviously, because it's double overtime. But in totality, Tennessee out-rebounds A&M 60-35. And the vast majority of that was on the offensive glass, where Tennessee got 24 offensive rebounds to 10 for Texas A&M. And here's the key stat for me. Tennessee, second chance points, 22-5. And there you go. In a game that goes to double overtime, poor Texas A&M. I mean, a lot of the time, like late in regulation, as this game was going back and forth and in overtime, it just felt like Tennessee was able to exploit some size mismatches. Nate Ament kept finding himself guarded by shorter players. And he's like, all right, I'm going to just shoot over you, right? And so really interesting stuff there. For Ament, finishes with 23 points on 7 of 16 from the field, critically 9 of 11 at the free throw line. Speaking of that free throw line, Tennessee left a bunch of shots there. So did A&M, if we're being honest. 31 of 42 for for Tennessee at the line. But the problem for A&M is they couldn't secure a rebound at the end of regulation, or was that the first overtime? And so Tennessee is able to just keep holding on, and they get to that second overtime. And so for Tennessee, man, critically important, huge win here. For Texas A&M, they keep coming on. They're going to surprise some teams in the SEC. Jakari Lane had 20 points, but just his size ended up missing some bunnies at the rim, like late in the second overtime. Pop Isaacs had 16 off the bench, 15 for Dominguez. Good stuff there. So great win for Tennessee. Just A&M's got to feel like they let one slip through their fingers to become the only SEC team to be 4-0 right now. Now, elsewhere in the SEC, both Florida and Alabama ranked teams were on the road. Florida takes care of business 96-79 in Norman. And the thing is, these Florida Gators are starting to come on. They lose their SEC opener at Mizzou. Since then, they beat a ranked Georgia team at home. They beat a ranked Tennessee team at home, and then they go back on the road and knock off OU by 17 points this would be. And for Florida, the big thing I'm looking at there as you look at this game is this is a moment where Boogie Fland's starting to come on a little bit. He hit a deep 3. He was 7 of 16 from the field, 1 of 5 for 3. So not exactly, not very efficient, but he's just starting to do some of that. But the other critical thing for Boogie Fland, in addition to that, 7 assists, 1 turnover. Still another kind of tough day for Xavier Lee as we're going to be critical of this Florida backcourt. We're going to keep watching it basically every game because it's so such an important deal to go along with that Florida front court. Lee, 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 6 from 3. It's just tough. Played 19 minutes. Again, Klavsar plays a lot more of those minutes. He had 27 in this game. Minutes, not points. The leader here is Tommy Houck, 21 points. Alex Condon gets 10. And so really interesting stuff there. So Florida kind of has their way. And even this 17 point, they led by 29 at one point, 60-31. It's just Florida on a little bit of a roll right now. Good stuff. Alabama, on the other hand, the final score looks pretty comfortable, 15. The Gators were down 14 kind of midway through the first half. They turn it on, they flip it, and they start going. They ended up leading by over 20. I think it was as much as 22 at one point before the final tally there. But LeBaron Philon, remember last week we were worried. They go lose at Nashville. He misses a lot of the end of the game, and it's like, dude, if he's not going to be able to go for Alabama, they are going to be in some trouble because yikes, right? And so Alabama, important win here. Really good to be able to get this after losing those back-to-back games. Because remember, they followed up the Vanderbilt loss by losing to Texas at home over the weekend. And then Mississippi State's up double digits in the first half. And I was thinking on Tuesday night, I was like, Bama, what are you guys doing here? But then Phylon, man, turns it on. 32 points, wildly efficient night, 10 of 14 from the field. Then you got Aiden Sherrill chipping in 22. So that's 54 of your 97 from Sherrill and Phylon. Really, really good stuff there. For Mississippi State, of course, Josh Hubbard chipped in 23. I just didn't have enough to, after building that lead, to stay with it the whole time. Tough for Mississippi State. But alas, we had a buzzer beater and a near buzzer beater on Tuesday night. John Blackwell gets one for Wisconsin on the road in the barn at Minnesota. Really cool stuff there for Wisconsin, because you always wonder, like, how are you going to follow up a big win like beating Michigan over the weekend? Well, they followed up by getting a road win 78-75 at Minnesota. Blackwell finishes with 27 overall. I mentioned a buzzer beater that wasn't. Unfortunately, Georgetown goes on the road to Creighton. And Georgetown, they're 1-4 in Big East play. And it's like, man, Ed Cooley, you got to get some wins, bro. They get a nice little tip in from Langston Love at the buzzer, or so it seems. But it was just one of those. What was that game the other day where it got overturned? The Auburn game last week. Similar kind of thing. I mean, it was so close, but they negate it. And then Creighton is able to pull it out in home. Good grief. At home in overtime. A massive night for Austin Swartz. Great stuff there. By the way, elsewhere in Big East play, St. John's dominated Marquette at home. Obviously, Marquette's not good. St. John's is going to win a bunch of games in the Big East because there's not a lot of great teams. Villanova wins at Providence. So Nova now 5-1 there, and that's really good stuff. All right. Anything else any other games I want to make? No. But I do want to just say, you probably saw the news on Tuesday. Unfortunately, Temple assistant coach Bill Courtney passed away at 55. And so, as always, man, we just want to mention those things when they happen in the college basketball community. So our thoughts and prayers to Coach Courtney and his family and that whole Temple community and others, that have obviously coached with him and been part of his life through the years. On Wednesday, there's not, at least compared to Tuesday's slate, there's not a ton of great stuff. I'm intrigued by Iowa at Purdue. Can Bennett, that Bennett Sturts Braden Smith matchup should be so fun. But can Iowa as a team, do they have anything for Purdue, or do they just kind of have their way at home there in Mackey? We'll see. Vanderbilt takes their undefeated record on the road to Texas. Remember, Texas just beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, so we'll see what happens there. Can Vandy keep things rolling? And then Kentucky is at LSU tonight. First game since the unfortunate news that Jalen Lowe is shutting down for the season to have shoulder surgery, which, writing was kind of on the wall with that. You hate to see it. But we'll see how Kentucky can go moving forward. So there you go. A fun Tuesday night of college hoops. Really, really great stuff. Hope you're able to watch a lot of great basketball. I know I was, and I loved it. As always, I want to tell you to subscribe to the show on video and audio if you haven't already done so. Check out the Locked On College Basketball Discord. The link for that is in the show notes. It's a great place to be. Also, apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Pokes. Cheers to the McBruins. And until tomorrow, Andy will be right back with you. Peace.